My name is Leroy Robert Zernicke. I was born in Shawano, Wisconsin, October 31st, 1935. My parents lived in Bondwell. They were Maynard and Ruth Zernicke. My mother's maiden name was Ruth Hout. My siblings are Martin, Mary, Wally, Betty, Carol, Lyle, and Gary. A game we played when we went visiting, we played baseball and things like that. And generally, if I didn't wear shoes with higher on, I just had dress shoes on, I'd turn my ankle over ice. I grew up in the little town of Bondwell. When I grew up, I guess I liked farming, and that's what I figured I wanted to be, a farmer. When I went to school, I went to Bondwell. There was a little grade school out in the country where we went. It was named Graf School, about 2 miles from where we lived. And then I went to the Bondwell High School, and I graduated there. That's as far as schooling I went. I graduated from Bondwell High School in 1953. In my yearbook, they put some stupid stuff in there. They always wrote in there, they said that I would come a little late to school sometimes and things like that. My friends were Ivan, Dwayne, Eddie Quant, Reynolds Schmidt, and several other ones yet, quite a few. Me and my friends, we got together and visited and hung around. At school we did some things we shouldn't have done maybe, but one time, my friends at school, our teacher, it was kind of a rainy day, and she says maybe we should wash her car. So we washed the car, we washed the motor and everything, and that night she couldn't get it started. She called one of the guys on the school board to come up, and then somebody got it going for her. And then she wanted to make us all stay in school. She sent a letter home with everybody to our parents, but then one of the school board members, they called him One Eye Albert Burst, and he come and he set her straight on that, so we didn't have to do nothing like that. When I got my driver's license, my dad's car wasn't so good, so my uncle took me to Shawano, and we parked in front of the courthouse where we get the license and stuff, and the guy come out and he says he can get in the car and drive, so we drove up to the first corner, and he says turn to the right, and every corner we got, drove back around right back to where we started. That was my driver's test. When my dad took my mother one time to the little town of Bondwell, they had a constable in town there that used to do things like that. When she got in the truck to drive around, he asked him if he had good insurance. Yeah, we had a barber shop in the little town of Bondwell. There was 2 barbers in there. The one guy, we didn't ever like to get him by his chair, because when he was in there, he'd start talking with his hands, and then he'd forget to cut hair, or the other guy would get in and 1, 2, 3, you were done. Then we had another barber. He was in a little town of Zarko. That was a nice place to go because he was fast and he was a good barber. Well, when I was going to high school yet, then I had a lot of neighbors in the town of there. They wanted to take off for a weekend, so then I'd have to go and do chores for them and stuff like that. Almost every weekend I had something to do. And then I worked for several farmers there. I worked for a fellow by the name of Ada Stern for a while. At that time I didn't even have no driver's license. My parents had to take me back and forth, and then I worked when I was going to high school, one farmer, he was on the school board, and he figured I could work there. He wanted me to work for him, and he said I wouldn't have to go to school. I could just do some extra work. But I worked there for a little while, and I didn't like that idea, so I went back to school and finished school, and then I worked. That was Ada Fink, and then I worked for a fellow by the name of Leonard Lemberg, and I worked there for quite a while, and after that then I worked in a cheese factory, and if I had stayed in a cheese factory a couple more months I could have got a cheesemaker license. Maybe I should have, because then I drove a milk truck after that for a fella. Well, I got up around 4:30 in the morning, and I started out, and I had to take milk cans back so the people could milk in the morning, and I drove 3 loads a day into a little town by the name of Seymour, Wisconsin, and it was a big van and all double-decked and stuff, so I think maybe that's why I'm wore out now, my arms. Well, my parents moved to Wausau here and bought a farm. Then I worked in a feed mill. It was the name Cereal Mills, they called it, a little old feed mill, and worked there for quite a while. And then after all, there was another mill across the bridge from there that was called Northern Milling. Then I worked there for a while. Yeah, I was farming at that time. The wife and I, my dad had my wife's uncle's farm rented when I was in the service, and then I milked cows up there. We had cows, and I had that rented, and then I worked out. I lived upstairs by my parents. And after all, when we bought this place here, well, even when we lived there, I drove school bus for about 15 years. Well, a lot of times I give them apples or stuff on Christmas or something like that, or some candy or something. Yeah, I was drafted into service in May 14th, 1958. We were living up here then, but I knew some friends from Shawano yet, so then when I went in, I went down to Shawano, and that's where I got drafted through in Shawano. And then I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. Then come home, we were done with that. Then I went to Virginia, Fort Eustis, Virginia. And then I got to be in a trucking outfit there with the 544 Transportation Company. And I was there, and then we got done there, then they sent us over to Germany. I was there for a year and a half, and our trucking company went over there. We didn't take the trucks, but they took the numbers over there, and then I was there for a year and a half in different towns. In Baumholder, that's was our little town, and Ida Oversteen was another town, and then we was by the Rhine-Main Air Force Base. Through that area was stationed. Oh, we went to France sometimes, and different places. We took a weekend off, me and my buddy. And one time when I was there, then him and I, we met up with some people from the United States, and that was the best weekend we ever had because they took us out for the weekend. Did all our expenses. They were happy to see us. Oh, we went to guest houses and places where had some pretty good times. My buddy, he liked to celebrate a little more than I did, but one time we had a German tailor there that we was good friends with, and he took us out for Christmas and stuff like that, this place, and then we had him made us each a new suit. My buddy and I, we always went to church every Sunday, but that was denomination, all together, the churches. But then we always stopped by the guest house on the way home generally, and my buddy had a little too much, and it had rained that night, and where our barracks was, there's a big hill down there, and he slid down the hill there and tore his suit all up. He had to have a new one made. I was in there in the reserves in 1960, but I never went because I was farming then, and I had the cattle to take care of, and I bought my cows to the loan company from the bank, and I had them sent them a letter that I had to take care of my cattle, so I never had to go to the reserves. I was discharged in April 30th, 1964. Met my wife one time. I had a friend that was playing in an orchestra from down in Bondwell, and he happened to be playing up here by Schmidt's Ballroom, so I went up there. I went to see him, and then her and some of her friends were sitting there, and I was sitting there, and we were talking, and that's what kind of met her. But I did meet her before already. My dad drove a milk truck down here, and we used to pick up milk by her parents' place, too. We were married in the little church down here, about a mile from here. They took it down now, and then the day was, a lot of people sent me cards because they said they didn't know if they'd come in December, what kind of weather, but it was such a nice weather that day, and it was just a little church. So many people come, they had to stand outside, they didn't even fit in the church. Got married in December the 3rd, 1960. The dinner was in Wausau. They called it the Fish and Game Club. It's because my father-in-law belonged to that, I guess, at that time, and that's where they had it. And then from there, we went to Schmidt's Ballroom for the dance and stuff, and at that time they didn't have no meals by the dance halls, and then the women all made sandwiches and had pickles and stuff they passed around at the dance after. I had some brothers and sisters that, I don't know about them, but we was going to stay by my father-in-law's place upstairs in the house. We was going to sleep where my wife, so I slept. Went up there, and they had put a bunch of oats in our bed. That's the kind of brothers and sisters I had. See, I think the sisters had more to it than the brothers did yet. But we kind of found it ahead of time, so. My children's names are Connie, Paul, Christine, Sharon, Shelby, Sandra, Michael, and David. I have 20 grandchildren, and there's 10 girls and 10 boys. I guess I bought it on an auction, I don't know, but I think we moved here in April 1st, 1964. Well, I had milk cows I had by my wife's uncle's farm when we had that rented. We moved them down here. Of course, I didn't have as many as we had. Maybe we had about 30 or 25 or something like that. Well, we had pigs. I think we even had some chickens one time. Right, we butchered pigs. And we used to butcher cows too, but we don't anymore. We take them in, but then my kids, they raised rabbits one time. They had the whole yard full of rabbits. When we moved here, I had small equipment and stuff like that, tractor and stuff that I farmed with. And then I worked together with my dad a little bit. Then as times went on, I bought some different stuff. Well, got bigger equipment, tractors and hay binds and combines. And they got a self-propelled chopper now. No, I wasn't on it that time. It was my son and my grandson who was on the combine that day. It started on fire once. My dad and I had some land rented one time by a little town, Little Chicago, and we was chopping corn. My dad got stuck, so I pulled onto the yard to unhook it, my wagon from the chopper, and I was on a little slant, and the wagon started rolling ahead, and I couldn't get out. I tried to get out in here. I got stuck between the chopper and the wagon. But then when we was chopping there, one of the girls happened to be in the house, and I waved to her she should come out there. And she come out there, and I said, block the wagon, and she left it roll ahead to the tractor, so I got out of there. Didn't get hurt though. Yes, one morning was just before Christmas. The telephone started ringing, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know what time of the night it was. And I come out of our bedroom here, and our machine shed up here was burning down with a bunch of machinery in. And then the neighbor had called, and he says, and the fire department called me, or the sheriff's department called, and says, get out of your house. I says, it ain't our house. I says, it's the machine shed. I says, and some of my favorite memories was having the children. And they was always very good. Once in a while they got out of hand, but most time was pretty decent. We got it all pretty good together. Well, we really didn't go too many places because we didn't with the kids, because we was always busy on the farm, but I did take them down to where we used to live in Bondwell and stuff like that, and there we'd drive around, and then I'd be driving, and then it says, I think we're lost or something, and by that I knew where I was going. I just always kind of teased them a little. Yeah, I used to take them to the fair, and I took my children to the fair in Wausau generally, and I'd take them up on a Ferris wheel. My wife never cared to ride nothing, so I went up on a Ferris wheel with them, but the other rides I didn't care to go on either. We went I like to go to parades always, and we took them to parades. I don't know if they enjoyed it always, but we did. Went down to Wisconsin Dells. We went on they called them ducks you can ride around on, and then we got on a boat there too, and they took us down to, my favorite memory with the grandchildren. They always come and hug me and stuff like when they come, and my wife always had a treat for them when they come, and they appreciated that. Thankful for being married to a nice wife what I had, and my grandchildren and my children and great-grandchildren, and I guess the life I got, but I got some aches and pains, but that's right. My wife was a hard worker, and she worked hard on the farm. She never worked out. She always, and when I worked out, if we didn't have the chores all done, she'd do them and stuff like that and finish up, and she worked hard on the farm. She used to drive tractor for the field too. She cut hay and chopped hay and baled hay, and she never did tillage work on the field though, but she did all the others. Well, at the table I always like to have a decent, nice meal, and potatoes and meat and gravy and vegetables and stuff. My wife was a good cook, and I miss her very much now. People should remember me if I was willing to help anybody. If they needed some help or stuff, I'd like to help them out and appreciate it when they help me too. And I don't know, I just like to work and be a good neighbor, I guess. For a long, fulfilling life, it's hard work and things like that, I guess. But then I guess now I'm maybe paying for some of it. Come the end of this month, on the 31st of October, I will be 86 years old. And I guess the way I understand, my children want to take me out for a meal that night. Okay, I appreciate all my children, and they were hard-working people on the farm here always, and they didn't always really get paid what they should have, and so when they got married, I tried to give them all a nice wedding and stuff, and I appreciated what they all did for me on the farm.